Gary Vee. Because when I first saw a video of him, I was like, oh, I don't like this guy. Like, he seems kind of like... Hey guys, so, well, I went to a seminar about a few weeks ago, and I hate to use the word life-changing because it's so used, but it was very life-changing. Or path-changing, or I don't know, but I love going to seminars. I used to love going to events, and I went to so many for a period of time that I think I was kind of burnt out. I'm always reading. I love self-development. So, but I think it's so easy to just forget what being in a room with people that are at a higher level than you can do. It was awesome. So before I move on, I just ask that if you haven't invested in yourself yet, please do so. It's so funny. I could have gone to something like this a few months ago and, maybe would have helped sooner, but the time I went was perfect. The situation, everything was perfect. The lessons I took away is perfect. They apply now. So if you haven't invested in yourself yet, please do so. I will go in more detail about this later. But yeah, if you're ready to hear my takeaways from Tony Robbins and Gary Vee, then please keep watching. Okay, first things first, Tony Robbins. He's a speaker. He's a coach. He's coached presidents. He's coached politicians, athletes, like big people. Like, they call him in when there's an athlete that is, freaking out and doesn't want to play, or you know what I mean. Like, his technique is effective. Like, he has to be effective. He has to get results. Like, now, so many celebrities, so many big name people that have worked with this guy. So I've been listening to him since I was like 10, because my parents would always play them in the car, and the cassettes and everything. He's great. And I remember even at that age, like, learning so much. Like, that's when you know your shit's so good, when even a 10-year-old can understand it. One of the first takeaways he said was momentum. That momentum's a secret. Like, momentum will take you through anything. It'll take you, once you have momentum, like, there's no stopping you. Except fear. Fear will always stop your momentum. And then he went through the 3 levels of mastery. The first level of mastery is cognitive understanding, so it's not enough to just know something, you also have to understand it. The second level of mastery is emotional mastery. And this is important because emotion drives action, and we're going to go over this a little more later. And the third level of mastery is physical mastery. So not just understanding it, not just feeling it, but also doing it. Like, you doing it so much that it becomes you. Like, it becomes part of your body. Like, you're not just, you don't just know that thing, you're about that thing, if that makes sense. The next is 3 decisions that shape your life. So he told a story about he grew up very poor, and it was Thanksgiving. His dad was drinking, and then some stranger knocked on the door and brought him and his family food for Thanksgiving. And then, of course, the dad was still trying to fight with the guy and saying we don't accept charity, and kind of like slammed the door in his face, but they brought the food in. And shortly after that, the dad left. Tony's dad left. So he says that shaped him, because up until that point, his dad had always told him that no one cares about us. No one cares about us. And after what happened that day, he saw that, well, someone cares about us. Someone cared enough to bring us food. So he gave that story as an example of the 3 decisions that shape your life. What are you going to focus on? Which that day he chose to focus on that people do care. Because he says, how will you ever be happy if you only focus on what you don't have? And that really hit home for me, because at the time, not that I'm like being ungrateful, but if you've seen my previous video, I talk about, the struggles I went through this year, like the big ass failure I had this year and how I learned from it. But when you're trying to improve something, you're constantly thinking about what's missing and how to make it better. But you're focused on what's missing. And in that, it becomes so easy to just focus on what you don't have. And I was doing that. So when he said that, I was like, wow, he's right. How will I ever be happy if I only focus on what I don't have? While it is important to improve things and to get better, you also need to focus on what you have, because that whole constant thinking that we need this, we don't have this, when we have this, we'll make it, when we have this, we'll be successful, when I have this, I'll be happy. The second decision that shapes your life is, what does this mean? So first you decided what you're focusing on, and now you're going to decide, what does this mean? And then the third decision that shapes your life is, what are you going to do? So now that you know what you're focusing on, now you've realized what it means, now what are you going to do? And he talked about how the important decisions of our life are made unconsciously. And then he talked about being emotionally fit. So I really love this part, because again, if you've followed my recent videos, or you've seen what I posted, I talked a lot about also depression this year, and how that was my first time like experiencing it to that extent, and not feeling like doing things, not wanting to do things even though I know I had to, because that would help me get out of my funk. And I just thought that depression was just something that we just have to deal with, and just something we're going to have to go through when it hits. And when he talked about being emotionally fit, he talked about it like a muscle, like just how, maybe because I work out. So that's how I like to give the example is before maybe I could only do 5 push-ups, and then I was able to work up to doing 10 or 20, or same thing with weights or putting weights on the squat rack or whatever. You're obviously at first you're not as strong, but eventually you build up to being able to carry a certain amount of good weight. And your emotions are no different. It's like a muscle. Maybe, before anything would bring you down, maybe before you're very negative, or you fall into a depression very easily. But if you work on being emotionally fit, then those things happen less and less. And I was like, wow, it makes sense, but it didn't really occur to me that you can work out your emotions like that, like a muscle, and that they can get stronger, which is great because that means that we have control. We don't always have to be at the mercy of how we feel, at the mercy of circumstances. That, if we get to a point where we're emotionally fit one day, we can bounce back from those things. So, oh my God. And then he talked about business and how he's worked with all these business guys and never really kind of mentioned the people he works with. So of course he's picked some things up, and he says one of the main things to have a successful business is to know who your ideal client is and make an irresistible offer to help them. And some awesome examples he gave of this was first Hyundai. Yes, it's Hyundai. So during the recession in '09, obviously a bunch of businesses went down. One of them was cars because no one had money to buy new cars at all. And so Hyundai came up with a commercial that said, we know that you're going through tough times, and times are hard right now for you and your family, but what would make it easier is for you to have a reliable car, a car that can get you to work, or that can get your family around. So Hyundai has decided to give you a car with zero money down, and if something happens in the next 24 months, if you lose your job or whatever, we'll take the car back, no questions asked. It was the magic offer, because boy, did they sell some fucking cars. And it's like, who would have thought of that? In the recession, I remember the recession, everyone was like scared and like, oh, we're fucked, and oh, what are we going to do? And no, like, if someone could come up with something like that in a recession, imagine like right now when things are fine. And then my favorite thing he said was about how important it is to change your state, like not just your mental state, but also your physical state. Because again, I don't know how many of you have ever been to a Tony Robbins event, but he has you doing cardio the whole fucking time. He has you like, I mean, he'll talk. Obviously, he'll talk. He'll give great value, but every now and then he'll have you just get up and start dancing and jump the music up, or he'll have you get up and do a little exercise, like not exercise, but like exercise where you shake as many people's hands as possible, or hug somebody next to you, or high five people next to you. Like, he's constantly having you move. And I'll be the first to tell you that it did make a huge difference. This event that I went to was super cheap where we saw him. And the reason for that is because he comes on maybe like at 3 or 4 p.m., but the rest of the day, it's all these speakers that are mostly just trying to sell you. They're kind of awful, to be honest. They kind of suck, and everyone is just like sitting in their chair because obviously they're not going to leave their chair because they want to have a good spot. And it was miserable the whole day. It was so miserable until he got there, and I swear the room energy was just like night and day. It was night and day. So he's kind of talking a little bit more about this, about why he focuses so much on movement as well as the other stuff. And he tells a story about when he had the opportunity to interview Mikhail Gorbachev. I'm probably butchering his name, but him and Ronald Reagan were responsible for ending the Cold War. And he had an opportunity to interview him years after all this. He asked him, for you, at what point did the war end? And so Gorbachev says that him and Ronald Reagan were like arguing and they just weren't coming to a solution. They were both like turning red, and that Ronald Reagan was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And he like walks away. He's fucking pissed. And then he just like turns around and like walks over like funny. He's like, let's try this again, shall we? My name is Ronald. Something like that. But oh my God, it was so funny. And that Gorbachev thought in his mind, okay, I can work with this guy. Like, just in an instant, like, imagine like the heated discussion they were having, and they're both turning red, and being able to just, like just change your state like that. That Gorbachev, for him, was the moment that the Cold War ended for him. Now, if you ask Ronald Reagan, it's kind of similar. His moment was same thing. They were arguing. They're both turning red. They're both pissed and just going at it and just not finding, any common ground. And Ronald Reagan's like, "Do you want to go for a walk?" And Gorbachev's like, "What are you talking about? It's like snowing outside. We're not going to go for a walk." And he's like, "Yeah, like let's go for a walk, And then he's like, "Okay, fine." And so they, they put their coats on because it's snowing outside, wherever they are, and they go from facing each other to walking side by side. And in that moment. That's when Ronald Reagan, for him, that's when the Cold War ended. So the reason for all this and why Tony talks about it is because changing your state can change history, basically is what he said. Changing your state can change history. So that's something I took away as well, because again, where I work, it's an office, it's a desk job. After a few hours I get tired. After a few hours I have low energy, and it, when he said that, it really did make me think like, wow, I'm not going to take responsibility for my energy. I can't just expect that it's going to come, or that fucking sitting down all day, of course it's not going to come. So I need to do something about that. So those are my takeaways from Tony. Now Gary Vee. I think the main thing, the first thing that really got me that he talked about was his whole spiel about content. Now, the whole Instagram thing and content is something I'm just getting into, but he said something so important. He said, I know a lot of you guys don't like me, but eventually you will. And he's so right, because when I first saw a video of him, I was like, oh, I don't like this guy. Like, he seems kind of like stuck up, you know, but eventually I did end up liking him, because he's actually a very nice, humble guy. But he was saying how you guys don't like me because I'm over here always in your face and telling you what's up and telling you the truth, but I'm going to keep showing up every day, because he talks about posting 30, 40 times a day. Obviously not on one platform. He uses like TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, like he uses everything. So on that spectrum of devices, of platforms, he posts 30 to 40 times a day. That's an absurd amount. And so he says that, he's like, so I know, like, whatever I'm telling you right now, you're not hearing me because you're not ready to hear me. But that's okay. I'm going to wait it out. And I'm going to show up every day. And I'm going to give you value every day. And then one day, when you're finally ready to hear me, I'm going to pop up whatever it is you're using, because I guarantee I'll be there. Whatever the thing is that's, popular at the time, I will show up there and you will hear me. And then I'll be able to help you. And I was like, wow, like that's such commitment to just show up like that every day, because he gives a lot of value. There's been many times that I'm like being negative or down or just being on my bullshit, and then I'll see a video of his and I'm like, oh, fuck, he's right. So that's commitment. That's showing up every day and giving value. That's giving more than what you're receiving, and that's probably why he's done so well. That's not probably, that's why he's done so well. So that was a big takeaway. I wasn't on there for very long, or maybe I didn't take notes because I was just like, like a deer in the headlights. I was just listening, and maybe I forget. But another big one that I took away from him was this lady, she's a realtor, and she was doing very well. And then the last few months, she's had a dry spell and hasn't really felt like doing much. And then she asked him, do you think I'm just like burnt out, or what do you think I need? And he's so simple. I love how simple he is. He was like, why does everything have to be so serious? Like, what if you just don't want to do real estate anymore? Like, what if you're not burnt out? What if you had, a good few months in real estate and now you don't want to do it anymore? Why can't it just be that? And again, like, I swear, being in a room with these people gives you perspective. It makes you look at things that you like wouldn't have thought of. And then he said, you're not lazy, you're just bored at the thing that you don't want to do anymore. It's like, wow, again, how many times or how many things have there been that I didn't want to do it? I felt like forced, or I felt like literally it was like pulling teeth, and we guilt ourselves into thinking that there's something wrong with us, or that we're doing something wrong. And he's right. Like, what if you just don't want to do that thing anymore? What if you don't have the energy because it bores you to death and you don't want that anymore? That's okay. You have the right to change your mind. You have the right to try different things. You have the right to not want to do something anymore if you really don't want to do it. So yeah, that was my takeaway from the seminar. I hope you guys took something away from it. Again, you're getting like the secondhand telling of it. So hopefully, if you guys weren't inspired to invest in yourself before, do it now. That seminar thing was like $100. It was super cheap. It was super worth it though. If you want to know like more information about where I went, I'll send me a message and I'll send it to you. But yeah, and there's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of things out there that are not expensive at all. Your meal probably costs more than what you could spend on that. So do it. Invest in yourself. That's the best thing you can invest in, is you. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, if you like what you heard, please head on over to my Instagram, thepurposecoaching.com. Talk a lot about stuff like this, about what to do when you hit setbacks, why you hit those setbacks, how you can move forward, how you can get unstuck. I'm here to help you guys, whatever you need, DM me. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Also, that same weekend, I saw Grant Cardone and Sylvester Stallone. That's my next video, so keep an eye out for that, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.